Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, kindly I remind all of the participants to fill in the e-certificate for this event at the end of the ceremony. Thank you. Our event will start in a short time. Please help yourself. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Berlibur ke kota setelah sarapan bubur dengan Mbak Rita. Sungguh gembira hati bisa berkenalan, banyak teman, banyak saudara. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, salam serumpun, and a very good afternoon to all professors, doctors, lecturers, and participants. In Malaysia and Indonesia, we say, tak kenal maka tak cinta. Thus, I am honored to introduce myself. My name is Ku Muhammad Shakir bin Ku Ahmad, a final year student of audiology in University of Science Malaysia, USM, and I will guide you to the afternoon session of our event. And first of all, I would like to give full gratitude to all participants who are still held on to this ceremony until now. Tons of knowledge were given by experienced panelists, keynote speakers, in which we hope that the sharing will benefit us in the future, inshallah. Before we continue, let us take a glimpse look of video of our corporate partners. Please welcome.
Hi, I'm Angeline, and I'm 25 years old this year. I am a CATS accountant, and I received my cochlear implant when I was 4 years old. When I first learned about Kenzo 2, I was looking forward to the off-the-ear wearing option and direct streaming features. When I work from home and need to attend the meetings virtually, the direct streaming features enable me to hear my colleagues clearly, and I was able to engage and participate better. I also love the fact that I can now take calls seamlessly with Kenzo 2. It makes communication with my loved ones at home and overseas so much easier. I also enjoy listening to music through my phone now. This was not possible before, and it was mind-blowing. A key highlight of Kenzo 2 was that it hides well under my hair. As a child, I was always conscious about how others see me with my sound processor, and I use all means to hide it under my hair. With Kenzo 2, I can now easily tie my hair up in a ponytail, and it definitely boosts my confidence.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to welcome all of you to our afternoon session. And for our afternoon session, we will divide our afternoon session into two rooms. And each room consists of experienced panelists from different professions. For room 1, we will focus on hearing, shared by Dr. Wan Najibah Wan Muhammad, Madam Au Chiu Lee, and Dr. Muhammad Fazil Nur Rashid, doctors and expertise from hearing care from University of Science Malaysia. For room 2, we will emphasize on education and psychology, shared by Prof. David Evan, Dr. Elga Andriana, and Dr. Shamsinar Abdul Jabbar, expertise in education and psychology from Universitas Gajah Mada and University Pendidikan Sultan Idris. For participants, you may choose to join any of the rooms you interest of. For participants who join through Zoom meeting, you can enter respective room by clicking the breakout icon at the bottom of the page and choose your interest room. And for participants who join through YouTube, YouTube link is provided for respective room in the live chat. Thus, by clicking the link, you can join through your respective room. Again, I repeat, for participants who join through Zoom meeting, you can enter your respective room by clicking the breakout icon on the bottom of the page and choose your interest room. And for participants who join through YouTube, YouTube link is provided for respective room in the live chat. Thus, by clicking in the link, you can join through the respective room. Okay, and we will start our respective room session in a moment. Now, participants can join the respective room. Thank you.
Give a few minutes for the participants to enter. Thank you. Okay, we try to start at around 3:18 Malaysia time. Now it's already 3:18. Are all speakers ready?
Hello, good afternoon. But
Elga is ready.
yes, I am ready.
Uh,
Am I going first?
yes, Dr. Elga will be going first.
Okay.
So let's start. Okay. Good morning. A very warm greetings to each and every one of you. Welcome to room 2. In this evening session, we will mainly focus on education for children with hearing impairment. Thank you for joining us, and we really hope that all of you will stay with us until the end of this session. Your support and cooperation are highly appreciated. Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Imanina binti Ibrahim. I am from Sultan Idris Education University, and I am the Master of Ceremony for today's evening session in room 2. Due to some circumstances, we will begin with second lecture first, and followed by by the first and third lecture. Okay, the second lecture will be presented by Dr. Elga Andriana. Dr. Elga Andriana is a lecturer and head of international undergraduate program at the Faculty of Psychology at Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. Her work focuses on the inclusive education, research by children, and also universal design for learning. She has written many articles. Some of her recent articles are entitled Inclusive Education for Indigenous Students in the Indonesian Context and Voices of Students with Intellectual Disabilities, Experience of Transition in Inclusive Schools in Indonesia, published in 2021. Okay, just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions and would like to ask to our speakers, you may do so by typing your question in the chat box. I will bring them up during the Q&A session. The link for the e-certificate will be provided at the end of this session. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Elga Andriana to continue with her lecture entitled Hearing Loss and Its Psychological Impact Across Lifespan, Two Worlds Narratives. You may do so, Dr. Elga.
Thank you so much, Imanina, for introducing me to the participant. And I would like to ask Salma or the other committee to share my PowerPoint. Thank you so much. Yes, so selamat siang, selamat tengah hari. Betul atau salah ya? Good afternoon. My name is Elga Andriana. I am a lecturer and a researcher at the Center for Lifespan Development, Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Gadjah Mada. My research focuses on inclusive education, especially studying the perspectives and voices of children and students with disabilities, using visual methods such as pictures, videos, photos, or stories, and finding out their psychological state, such as happiness, unhappiness, self-determination, self-advocacy skills, as well as their social relationships. And today I'm going to share some photos and videos of students with hearing impairment and their stories. The students involved or their carers have given permission for me to share their photos and videos. There will be 3 narratives and a school video, and see if you can find keywords, of their psychological experiences or psychological states, and write them down in the chat column. So I mentioned before, for example, happiness, unhappiness, self-determination, and self-advocacy skill, or social relationship. So please feel free to write down anything that you spot during my presentation, and you can drop it on the chat column. Ya, silahkan kalau nanti selama saya presentasi, Bapak Ibu, teman-teman bisa menemukan kondisi-kondisi psikologis ya, misalnya bahagia atau tidak bahagia, senang atau tidak senang, determinasi diri, keterampilan advokasi diri, dan juga relasi sosial, boleh tulis di kolom chat ya. Oke, next slide please. So this first narrative is a story from Mariam. She is 10 years old and learning as a santri. Santri in general term is a term for someone who follows Islamic religious education in pesantren or Islamic boarding school. Santri usually stay in the school until their education is complete. Hello, I am Mariam. I'm 10 years old. I'm from Bogor, West Java. Now I'm living in Yogyakarta to become santri in Darul Ashram. This is my boarding school where I learn to recite and memorize Quran. I live separately from my parents. Here I have a lot of friends who are also deaf, and I feel happy to be with them every day. I learn Quran and Hadith every day. All of my teachers teach me patiently when I'm wrong in reciting Quran. When I'm wrong in reciting Quran with sign language. I want to recite 30 juz Quran with sign language. I want to become senior santri and teach how to recite Quran after finishing primary school. Can you please help me play the video, Mbak Salma? Can we play the... if you click the play button, Salma, we can see. Thank you. Next slide, please. The second story is of a teenager who lives in a jungle named Jago. Jago is deaf and around 17 years old. He is active in helping his parents to hunt and gather. So he lives in a community that's still practicing hunting and gathering. Gathering means collecting and selling fallen palm fruit for family needs. He is eager to learn, but is often ridiculed by his friends because of his inability to learn. For example, his friends have memorized A to E, yet he hasn't memorized it yet. Just last month, there was a 2 weeks visit by university students to the community. Every day, the uni students run morning exercises and study time. Jago always joined both programs. Until one day, it was the time the students had to go back to the city. Jago wanted to join them and got on the bus. He didn't want to come down and cried when we told him to. We had to carry him off the bus, and as soon as he got off the bus, the group immediately departed. It seems that the experiences of 2 weeks with the uni students was very memorable for him. He can't get access to education from us, but I think the friendship and acceptance of the uni students really impressed him. The uni students also understood that he has special needs, so they treated him well, not like his friends. This story is credit to Johanna, an educator of Anak Rimba Komunitas Konservasi Indonesia Warsi. Next, please. From santri to a teenager who lives in a jungle, now it is a story from a university student named Danis. I will break down her story into 3 episodes. This is the first episode. I entered kindergarten in 2005. I stopped using hearing aids since 3rd grade of elementary school because I was comfortable communicating with sign language. However, honestly, I have a hard time communicating with my family. For example, my family gathers in the main room, but I like to stay in my room because I'm just a deaf person. I don't understand what the family is talking about. Sad, huh? I'm just trying to communicate by handwriting or typing on a mobile phone. Only my sister and my cousin can use sign language. Alhamdulillah, I'm grateful. I attended special school from elementary to high school. But actually, I always wanted to move to a regular school because the special school system is very different from regular school. For example, deaf students in special high school study junior high school contents. I feel it is not equal. That is why I asked my parents to move me to a regular school. But I wasn't allowed because of the economic reason and my mental state. Why? Because I was discriminated against by my friends when I was in elementary school. Since joining TPA program. TPA is a program with regular children to learn reading Al-Quran. When I read Iqra and spoke with my unclear voice, they laughed. That is why I felt I was discriminated against by my friends. I was down. I think it's really painful. Next slide, please. Next, when I was in high school, I was taught by a religious special school teacher. Thank God I was able to read with my voice without being discriminated against by anyone. I know special school is too good for special needs children, but I want the special school education system to be equal with regular school and the special school education system to teach Pisindo. So Pisindo is sign language in Bahasa Indonesia. Because some special schools do not allow deaf children to use Pisindo, they are obliged to learn to speak verbally. That is called discrimination and violates the human rights of the deaf. We are deaf and use our mother tongue, sign language. Otherwise, deaf people's education is lower than education of the hearing people, as it is now. Actually, there are some deaf people who cannot write Indonesian properly, like they cannot compose the correct ones. That is why I suggested that special school teachers should be able to use Pisindo. Next. Finally, now I'm in the 4th semester in library science. To be honest, I have a lot of difficulties when I do assignments, such as making resumes, papers, and research. I feel like this is because Bahasa Indonesia is so difficult for me. It's because I have always used sign language for talking to each other since I was a kid. The sign language that I use is in Pisindo, so it makes me difficult to learn grammar in Bahasa. But thank God to the Disability Service Unit volunteers who helped me to learn Indonesian. Even now, I'm still learning Indonesian class. I really hope that the government will change the special education system to be equal to the regular school education system. I hope the government, special school, and a lot of people around the world can listen to my story. Thank you. Next, please. We have heard the stories of Mariam and Danis that involve sign language. Sign language is a true language, comes from studies that sign language has the same neurological underpinning as does spoken language. Neuroimaging technique shows that the left hemisphere of the brain is also the primary site responsible for sign language acquisition and use, referring to spoken language. So it is important that teacher of a child who is deaf learn the communication system that the child is best able to use. The language of the child's culture, whether it is expressed in sign or oral form, must be provided in the educational setting so the child to learn, communicate further and meaningfully in the community. The teacher's parents' abilities to sign not only will aid the child in developing a communication system, but also will enhance the child's academic success and his or her social skill and peer interaction. Next, please. The individual patterns of child with hearing loss can vary widely. The intra-individual differences among these children show the heterogeneous nature of children who have hearing loss. The 3 students presented before show the wide range of needs that individuals with hearing loss can have, including his or her learning as well as his or her social skills. Students who are deaf can face problems in finding others with whom they can communicate. Studies demonstrated that many students who are deaf are at risk of loneliness. The need of social interaction is probably most influential in leading many students who have hearing impairment to associate or make friends with others who also have hearing impairment. In inclusionary setting, little interaction typically occurs between students who are deaf and those who are not. Therefore, after listening to those stories, we learn that various forms of communication, either for the deaf students and also the members of the community, is important. Also, we learned that belonging is significant for people with hearing loss. Next, please. There is no single success guarantee method exists for educating deaf children. Through history of deaf education, various methods have been proposed as the pedagogical solution. Ultimately, the profession may recognize that only a range of approaches can meet the various needs of a range of deaf children. Sign language, one of the form of communication, is considered the primary language, and oral is considered the secondary language. Bilingual education for students who are deaf can be structured so that sign language is learned first, followed by oral, or the two can be taught simultaneously. People who are deaf play an important role in the development of the program and its curriculum. And the curriculum needs to include instruction in deaf culture. So deaf culture or deaf community is a very diverse group whose members are composed of many different religious, social, and ethnic backgrounds who shared bonds, similar values and tradition, a common language of sign language, and often behavioral protocols that are known to and practiced by group members. Members of deaf community is part of the individual identity. The deaf community has the status of a minority group within the mainstream culture. Its members are bilingual. They provide one another with a sense of belonging and pride, and they help one another overcome possible isolation from mainstream society. Next, please. The next video, which is the last or the closing slide, is showing junior and senior high school of Tumbuh High School who are deaf, practicing singing with sign language. They were going to perform for the end of school celebration. The school is inclusive school, a term for regular school that accept children with disabilities. This practice allows children and adolescents with hearing impairment to participate and at the same time instill belonging, acceptance, sign language skills for the school community member. Salma, please play the video.
Play, yeah.
So yeah, there are 4 students who are deaf and there are 3 teachers, and they perform that song and the sign language in front of all of the students, parents, and also teachers at that school. Next slide, please. Thank you for listening, and I hope to hear some comments and questions from you all. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Elga Andriana, for the very insightful guidance. The story from Danis and Mariam are very touching and inspiring to me, and I think, and I'm sure to others as well. So, in UPSI, I am currently learning to teach for the blind students, for students with eyesight impairment. But when I watch the videos are so lovely, and it made me feel like I want to learn sign language as well. So thank you, Dr. Elga. Okay, so now we will proceed with the Q&A session. Okay, I have two questions for you, Dr. Elga. So the first question is, in Yogyakarta or Indonesia in general, could doctor describe how the sign language method or type of instructions to those with hearing impairment? Any similarities between any districts in whole Indonesia? Yes, Dr. Elga. You may answer the first question first, then we will go with the second question. Okay.
Okay, thank you for the questions. I believe there are two main sign language in Bahasa Indonesia. Yeah, one is Pisindo, the other one is I try to remember, but I can't get that name. Yeah, and yes, as the story that we found from Danis, yeah, usually and most people with hard hearing or deaf, those who are deaf, are learning the other sign language, yeah. But as Danis mentioned, it is very useful if children who are deaf and teachers, especially special school teachers, learn how to sign with Pisindo, yeah, because it has strong connection with the writing forms, yeah, especially when dealing with grammars. And apart from that, Mbak Imanina, we have so many sign language in each region, like each community and each culture have their own sign language, very unique sign language that could not be understood probably by other people. Yeah, so this is very rich culture, not only in spoken language. We have so many bahasa daerah, yeah, in Indonesia. I trust in Malaysia too, right? And we have that bahasa isyarat daerah, yeah, so many of them. So I trust that this is really our strength, yeah, to have such richness sign language, and it is it is important, yeah, for teachers and parents to learn those language, either the bahasa, the formal one, the bahasa Indo one, or the daerah one, yeah, to be able to support children that usually they need different forms of languages, yeah, oral, sign, written, yeah. I think the multi-language approach will benefit our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Elga, for the clear explanation. Okay, we have questions from Han Hui Hee. Okay, the question is, how can we support the mental wellness of individuals with hearing loss and their family?
Thank you so much, Han Hui Hee. That is a very important question. I think reaching positive mental health, yeah, well-being is our ultimate goal, yeah, to support our children who are deaf, yeah. As we can see from the story, Mariam, yeah, she is happy. Why she is happy? because he has a lot of friends. Yeah, and friends, acceptance from friends is really the key. Research has revealed that. Yeah, we might want to work hard with academic skill or that micro skills that we want our students to perform, but acceptance, belonging, I think that's a huge problem. Yeah, for us in Indonesia. I'm not sure whether in Malaysia too. Yeah, so we need to work out. Yeah, how the community, especially in inclusive community such as regular school, yeah, how to accept and support the peer groups, yeah, to have those skills communicating with deaf children, yeah, accept them, include them meaningfully within their community, yeah. Therefore, we supporting the mental wellness of the individuals, yeah, because they feel part of the the regular community, the mainstream community. Yeah. And yeah, as we have seen from Jago, yeah, how he wanted to follow the students to the city because he felt welcomed, yeah, and felt loved, yeah, by those students compared to the peer group in the jungle community who often ridicule him, yeah, not because maybe they don't like him, yeah, but maybe they just don't know how to include, yeah, students who are deaf, especially in that indigenous community who maybe, you know, information, knowledge, and skills is rarely shared, yeah. And also we have Dani's experiences who really, you know, had quite a painful experience during her childhood, being left by her friends. Yeah, and that kind of singing with sign language, trying to encourage the community to learn. Yeah, at least learn very simple sign language that can be used, saying hi or I love you or etc. Yeah, that could really give big impact to students who are deaf, feeling accepted.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Elga. Okay, we have one more question from Han Hui Hee. I believe this is the finest question for you, Dr. Elga. What is your suggestions to deal with schools and public who criticize parents who send their child with hearing impairment attended to mainstream school?
Yes, I think this is such a huge problem in Indonesia, yeah, to understand about inclusive education, yeah, because it's still new and people are still, still try to understand what is behind inclusive education. So if schools or public criticize parents who send their children to mainstream school, I think what we can do is explain the benefits of inclusive education, both for the children who are deaf as well as the children in the mainstream school, yeah, what so-called regular children. Although I don't really like to use that term, yeah. I think that's that being inclusive school, and that means sending some children to go to mainstream school, really help our society become more inclusive. Yeah, I mean, inclusive society grows from smaller community being inclusive, such as schools, yeah, being inclusive schools. However, I think it is independent choice. Yeah, there is nothing wrong or right, yeah, for parents and their children to choose to go to special school or inclusive schools. Yeah, I think the variety, the diverse needs of the children with hearing impairment, the diverse condition among special school and inclusive school is, could lead a parent and a child to decide which best for them, right? Yeah, so it is their independent decision what is best for the child, and really depends on the child's voice, the child's input, and the family decision. Yeah, I think so. What we can do is really encourage all schools, special school or mainstream school, to provide quality education. Yeah, and in the end, it is the inclusive community that we are trying to achieve. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Elga, for the very clear explanation. Okay, so we have come to the end of the Q&A session for this lecture. Okay, and now let's proceed with the next lecture. So before we begin, allow me to introduce our speaker, Professor Dr. David Evans. Professor Dr. David Evans is a professor of special and inclusive education in the Sydney School of Education and Social Work, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences at the University of Sydney, Australia. He is also the adjunct professor of Faculty of Human Development, UPSI, Sultan Idris Education University. He also has over 30 years of experience in teacher education in the areas of special education and inclusive education. And his research more focuses on attitudes towards the principles of universal design for learning, curriculum differentiation, and teacher self-efficacy towards universal design for learning. Once again, before we start with the lecture, I would like to kindly remind you again, if you have any inquiries, you may drop your question in the chat section. Now, I would like to invite Professor Dr. David Evans to continue with his lecture entitled Inclusive Education for Children with Hearing Impairment. You may do so, Professor David.
Thank you very much, Imanina. That's the second. I met you last week. It's wonderful to see you again, and it's wonderful to see my my colleague, Dr. Andriana. Welcome to everyone who is listening to this broadcast, whether it be in Indonesia or Malaysia or anywhere else in the world. I apologize for the little mix-ups with times, but I had a class to teach. Before I start, though, I would like to acknowledge, and this is a very traditional Australian custom, to acknowledge the tradition of custodianship and law of the country on which the University Sydney campus stands. Pay respects to those who have cared and continue to care for country. I would also like to pay my respects specifically to those persons who may be part of today's session who identify with hearing loss. In preparing for today, I did what a lot of people do, I think, is we Google things. And I Googled International Hearing Day, World Hearing Day. And I was fascinated to see that to hear for life, listen with care was the statement that was associated World Hearing Day in 2022. And in looking at that statement, I suppose one of the things that I immediately thought of was the things that I have learned from listening with care to persons who experience a hearing loss. In the Australian context, students who go to school with a hearing loss or with a hearing impairment are predominantly in mainstream settings. The number of schools, for example, that cater only for students with a hearing loss or who are deaf is very small indeed. And those schools that do exist tend to be quite specialised and cater for students who often have other impairments. They have multiple and complex educational needs. So while hearing is a primary impairment, it is not the only impairment these students experience. But there are a couple of schools that cater for students with who are deaf or with hearing loss. Most students, though, are in mainstream schools, and it's there that they have taught us many, many things. I actually have a video which I would love to play to you, but I don't have permission to play it. And it's a young lady who I met probably, she'd be 22, 23 now. So I probably met her 17, 18 years ago, just before she went to school. And she attended an early intervention centre. It was an early intervention centre for young children, and I mean young children, from months old to adolescents, who all experience hearing loss and primarily deaf. One of the things that all of these young people shared was that in being deaf or with a severe hearing loss, they also used augmentative hearing devices as part of that. So cochlear implants, for example, or some other sort of augmentative hearing device. But this young lady she's one of a number of children who attended this centre, but she's one of the ones that stands out for me because she taught me so much. She taught me so much about hearing for life and listening with care. For example, she was a young lady with a severe hearing loss and in bilateral cochlear implants. And she also had cerebral palsy. So she had a limitation in her movement, but through intensive early intervention, not only through care from an audiologist, from a special educator, from mainstream preschool teachers and their children. It was also through her family, all sorts of supportive people. She learned to walk. She learned to walk at around about the age of 5 or 6. And I remember that day very vividly because I'm convinced people saw her as somebody who had difficulty walking because of her cerebral palsy. She used augmentative hearing devices in terms of cochlear implant. They were visible. And I'm not sure if they really, I think their expectations and their attitudes was this young lady, there was some sort of pity for her. But she was a very strong young lady and she had a strong voice. And it was listening to that voice eventually that got her what I see as a really, really important step in her life. She was learning to walk. And one of the things that the school was very concerned about was that if they let her try and walk by herself, she would fall over and she might hurt herself. And one day I vividly remember the story being told to me that she said to her teacher one day, "Do not hold my hand. I want to be able to walk by myself." And the teachers continued to hover around her because they were afraid that she would fall over. But she had a voice and she persisted with her voice, and her teachers eventually listened. And with that persistence and with that support of those people around her, including her peers, she became an independent walker. That was one of her primary goals, to be able to walk by herself. But to do that, she needed a voice. To have that voice, she needed people to assist her to get around the the impact of not being able of having a severe hearing loss. And with that voice, she became a person who went on not only to successfully complete high school. She and the video that I have of her is very particular about this, is that she was going to become a scientist, she was going to become a doctor, and she was going to be a researcher at Harvard University, where she was going to investigate hearing loss. Can I tell you, I am pretty sure she did not go on and do that. In fact, she went on to do a degree here at the University of Sydney in history. And but it was because of the people around her and because of the services around her, I believe, that she became such a strong advocate. I remember introducing her to my dean one day, and the dean sat down with her and she listened to her talk and listened about what she wanted to achieve. And I remember the dean, who was not comfortable in terms of being in the presence of young people with disability, she came away thinking, wow, that is one strong lady. But to do that, she needed to use alternative means of hearing. And it was not only just through an augmentative device. She learned different ways of signing. She learned different ways of informally gesturing and making herself heard. But it also taught many people around her to listen and to listen to her voice, which was incredibly important. One of the things that comes out of that story for me, and many of the stories that I hear from that same centre, is that our universal healthcare system here in Australia is really important. Every child who is born is screened at birth and in the early months for a hearing loss, for vision impairments, for developmental delays. But hearing loss is one of them. So a universal healthcare system is really, really important. Early identification is important. And if a child is identified with an early with a hearing loss, there are support systems within our health system and within our social welfare system to ensure families get the support they need to ensure that their child receives adequate health care and adequate support to allow them to develop with their peers. Preventing hearing loss and addressing hearing loss either through early intervention at a young age or prevention at an older age, like myself, is also something that is widely upheld through our universal healthcare system. And making sure that we design a way forward for all people with a hearing loss. For example, most of our students with a hearing loss attend the regular school. Our students without a hearing loss, it's part of their life. It's part of being at school where there is a child who may have a hearing loss, who may be deaf. It's a really important part of promoting an inclusive community and an inclusive educational environment. In educating all students, we need to be able to educate and support students with hearing loss. In our schools, for example, if schools do need support, most schools can access that support either through our specialist hearing services departments, whether it be in our local school systems or through a special. Here in Sydney, we have the Royal RIBC, Royal Institute for Deaf and Blind. So they provide amazing services for schools and educators. I'm a firm believer in the use of the universal design for learning, because if you really are using a rich version of universal design for learning, you're providing multiple means of representation, multiple means of action and expression, and multiple means of engagement. Our schools, if they require Braille, can get access to Braille. They have to be organised, but they can get access to it. I believe that persons with a hearing loss and who are deaf or who are deaf are instrumental in changing our mindsets around students and persons with hearing loss and with a disability. I can remember this young lady, amazing. I can remember a young man. I still use my videos from him when he was a young boy, and the determination that he had to not only walk and to be an active member of his community, but his hearing loss, his profound hearing loss, was not going to be an impairment. It was not going to be somebody else's reason not to talk to him. And he would get out there and he would celebrate his life. And he taught so many people about the role of being positive and taking a positive step forward. In conclusion, I think celebrating World Hearing Day, for example, is a really important part of our of the year. But I also see it should be every day of the year. It should be something that we celebrate. And like all of us, people with a hearing loss and who are deaf have lots to teach us, and lots that we can learn from them in our societies. And it's only through that active listening and listening to each other that we'll learn, I think, a lot more about each other and build stronger, inclusive environments. Thank you very much, Imanina. I hope that wasn't too long. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor David, for the very insightful lecture. Okay, to be honest with you, your story based on your past experience are very lovely with those students with hearing impairments.
Yeah.
I really love to listen to your stories.
Thank you, Imanina.
We will now proceed with the Q&A session. I have a question for you, Professor David.
Oh.
No, it's not a tough question. I promise.
Okay.
Okay. Could you suggest how the cochlear implant supported the Australian children with hearing impairment in the classroom? Yeah.
I first acknowledge that cochlear implants can be contentious. There are some people in our community who feel that use of a cochlear implant changes things dramatically, and there's a culture around the community of people who are deaf and hard of hearing. For the young people who I worked with and observed and got to meet, both as young children, as babies, some of them, and now as young adults, cochlear implants have made an enormous change to their life. I remember going to visit a young man who was just literally just up the road here in a school, and he was just part of the classroom. All right, the cochlear implants are not perfect, and he still needed assistance with his hearing through specialist services. But by being in the classroom, everybody got to learn about how this young man was included, and it became part of their life. So educating these young people wearing a cochlear implant or not wearing a cochlear implant alongside of their peers, I believe taught many of today's adults about hearing impairment, how they needed to be aware of people with hearing impairments, remembering that many of us in older life experience a hearing loss. Many of them are appreciative that some of the things that they do prevent people from hearing. For example, wearing masks during COVID is problematic. But in this environment now, I think we say to people, is there anyone who needs me to take my mask off while we're talking in class? And if that's the case, then I need to position myself in the classroom where I do not, where I can socially distance, and so I'm not causing anybody else any threats. It's all of that involvement as part of a schooling community that I think grows a much greater awareness and inclusive environment for everyone.
All right, thank you, Professor David, for your answer. Okay, we have another question from Fitri D. Abasuni. Okay, the question is, I am interested in universal design, learning design. Would you please elaborate more?
Okay, so we could spend a lot of time on universal design for learning, and I am convinced that my colleague, Dr. Adriana, would be much better at doing this. Universal design for learning opens up a whole range of possibilities, in my view. So in terms of people who are deaf or with a hearing impairment, universal design for learning, I think, puts them on the page and says we need to be aware of everybody. We need to be teaching to the margins, as they say in the literature. I would argue that if you are having to provide Braille for someone, that is probably going to be a specialist service. And while universal design for learning can address many, many issues, something that is so highly specialized like Braille might be something that needs to be included into the planning. I see that as a specialist support role. But there are many other things we can do in a universal design for learning environment, or in designing a universally accessible learning environment, making sure that we place students in the classroom where they benefit from being able to, for example, read lips, not having noise impact the hearing that they may possess, making sure that students have an opportunity to have a voice and are given time to have a voice, and that people don't interrupt and those sorts of things. It's about building a culture within a learning environment. Universal design for learning, I think, raises the bar in considering the barriers that we potentially build into our learning environments. And that's where I would probably stop. But yeah, I think it highlights to us that there are potential barriers in the environment.
All right, thank you, Professor David. I think that will be the last question for you.
Oh.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So
Yeah,
we have come to the end of the Q&A session for this lecture. Thank you, Professor David, for the very clear explanation. So now let's proceed with the final lecture that will be presented by Dr. Shamsina Abdul Jabbar. Dr. Shamsina Abdul Jabbar is a senior lecturer of Faculty of Human Development, Sultan Idris Education University. She has over 14 years of experience in the areas of special education and also the education for students with hearing impairment. One of her expertise is on developing multimedia courseware for students with hearing impairment. Once again, before we start with the lecture, I would like to kindly remind again, don't forget to drop your question in the chat section provided. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Shamsina Abdul Jabbar to continue with her lecture entitled Technology and Deaf Learners. You may do so, Dr. Shamsina.
Okay, thank you, Imanina, for the introduction. And greetings to all the participants, and also to Prof. David Evans, all the way from Australia, and also to Dr. Elga. Okay, thank you for having me this afternoon. And today I will share about the technology and the deaf learner. I'm not sure why I cannot share my, maybe the organizer can share my video. I'm having problem sharing my video right now. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Imanina. And then before I start, let me introduce myself. Yeah, I am Shamsina, and I'm a senior lecturer at the Fakulti Pembangunan Manusia, UPSI. And I have 40 years of experience in special education, and I'm specialized in deaf education. And my interest in my research interest is in developing educational tools for deaf learners. Okay. Okay, next. Okay, next. All right. As the introduction, I give you the statistic, yeah, the population of the deaf in Malaysia and also in the world. Okay. As the 2019 National Health and Mobility Survey, it shows that 7.6% of the adult population with an estimated 1.9 million people in Malaysia has a hearing impairment. And as for the World Report on Hearing 2021, hearing impairments affect more than 1.5 billion people in the world. And approaching 2050, 2.5 billion world population will have hearing problems. Okay, next. Okay, I will share with you, all of you the education system for hearing impairment student in Malaysia. We have 4 levels of education system for hearing impairment student. At the preschool level, we have 3 programs, which is Program Pendidikan Khas Integrasi, or also known as PPKI. And then we have special schools and also inclusive class. And then at the primary level, we have PPKI, special school, and inclusive. As for the secondary level, we have additional, other than PPKI, special school, inclusive, and we have a vocational school. And then for the tertiary level, we have polytechnic and also university level. Okay, thank you. Next. Next. Next, please. Okay. Now, I would like to share with you the technology for the hearing impairment learner. Yeah, there are 2 types of technology here that I will discuss, which is assistive technology and also a digital technology. Okay, next. What are assistive technologies and digital tools? Yeah, digital technologies. I will short form the assistive technology as AT. Okay. AT is any item, piece of equipment or product system, whether acquired commercially off the shelf, modified or customized, that is used to increase, maintain or improve functional capability of a child with disabilities. And this definition can include something as simple as a pencil grip or something as complex as a zip and pulse switch activated power chair. And as a digital tools, digital technology, it include programs, websites, or online resources that can make tasks easier to complete. Okay, next. This is the example of the assistive technologies for hearing. And as we all already know that the famous assistive technologies that being used are the hearing aids and also cochlear implants. And one of the other technology is FM system. As we already been given a talk this morning about the cochlear implants and hearing aids. So these are the one of the tools that can help the children with hearing impairment to hear better. Okay, next. And what does it do? Yeah, assistive technology. What does it do? First of all, it focuses on the student's strengths rather than weaknesses. Yeah, and then increases the independence of the student with hearing impairment, and it also enriches educational outcomes for the student, and it's related to function rather than a particular disability. Okay, next. For the types of assistive technology, there are 4 types. The first one is no tech. That means there are no technology used. And for the example, we can see it is simple modification, inexpensive, ready to use, and affordable tools. For the medium tech, may cost more, requires some training, relatively complicated, and mechanical devices. And for the low or light tech, less sophisticated, easy to learn, readily available, and affordable tools. And the fourth one, high tech, it is a very advanced, needs specific training, may require ongoing support, electronic or digital devices, and it is also expensive. Okay, next. These are the example of the tools with no tech. Yeah, the first one is pencil grip. Yeah, it can be used without any technology. Yeah, and then the buzzers, magnifying bars, raised line paper, and also a weighted pencils. Next. As for the low tech tools, yeah, we can see there are portable word processor, post-it note, binder clip, lights, and also a graphic organizers. Next. And example for the medium tech, electrical devices, audiobook, a scooter, wheelchair, and also a calculator. Next. And for the high tech, the technology is more advanced, yeah, and it also is expensive. For example, it's a touchscreen devices as our smartphone. The concept of smartphone, touchscreen devices, text to speech or speech to text. Yeah, these apps are very useful to deaf people, especially when they cannot speak. They can text, and automatically the apps will convert the text into a speech. And then tablet. Yeah, everybody may use tablet. Can use tablet to do a lot of things actually with tablet. Yeah, maybe we can use in the classroom setting, or if you want to teach people, student with hearing impairment. If we don't have a devices that can provide apps that can be used to teach the hearing impairment student, we can use tablet. Okay, and then a smart board. And then the smart board, and also a word processors. Okay, next. All right. why assistive technology devices are important, especially for the classroom setting, for the for the hearing impairment student. Okay, next. Next, please. Okay. The use of assistive technology devices for the classroom is very important actually for the hearing impairment students because it will help the student with the hearing tools. They can hear better when the teacher speak in the class. Yeah, and these are the tools that they need in the classroom setting. For the first one is FM system. Yeah, what the FM system can do. FM system send the teacher's voice from a wireless microphone directly to a receiver worn by a student with hearing loss. And it can be connected to a hearing aid or cochlear implant or a headset earbuds. And this enhances what the child is able to hear, as they are able to directly hear the teacher's voice without distractions. Okay, and then we can also use a closed captioning. Yeah, closed caption provides spoken dialogue as printed words on a screen when playing a video or audio. If indicated on a child's IEP, schools are required to use caption, audio, and video. Okay, next. And augmentative and alternative communication. These are a device that are used for communication. Yeah, and the strategies that replace or support verbal communication for those who have difficulties using speech. In this case, this is very useful to the hearing impairment student which cannot speak, and the use of picture or symbols to represent words that student can use to create phrases or sentences to communicate non-verbally. And this is useful way of communication between deaf students and their teachers and peers that do not know sign language. Most AC devices in classroom are on iPads, tablets, or they can also be done on paper. Next. Next is speech to text. Speech to text devices convert spoken word into written text. And there are many apps on technology devices that use a microphone to decipher what the speaker is saying and then translate it to text on the screen. This can be a helpful tool during lectures, so students can pay attention to what the teacher is saying and keep the transcript as their notes rather than having to take down the notes. Some examples of speech-to-text apps are Google Live Transcribe and AVA, which both translate spoken word into written text. Okay, next. When we use assistive technologies, the classroom setting is very important. Yeah, and this is the classroom settings for hearing impairment students. One is use captions, where all the students benefit from caption, especially those who are deaf or hearing impaired, plus those with Bahasa Melayu as a second language. Actually, when as the hearing impairment student, their first language is Bahasa Isyarat lah, yeah. The sign language is their first language. So in Malaysia, Bahasa Melayu as a second language. Okay, and their third language, of course, English. English is their third language. Okay, and then other than that, we must make use of available technology. For example, the classroom must equip with the technology such as interactive whiteboards and sound amplification systems. Okay, next. And the use of visual stimulus also can help the children, the student with hearing impairment. Yeah, teacher can use visual stimuli such as providing lesson outlines, main points, and any direction or display board to help the students. And we also can consider classroom arrangement. Yeah, when we set the classroom arrangement, the best way to put them in the classroom is to position where their face can see teachers. The position in the classroom, it can help them to understand what the teacher are trying to say, when the teacher is teaching. Okay. Next. And keep unnecessary noise to a minimum. This is very important, especially for the students who are wearing hearing devices as their tools to hear. Okay. And the student who have hearing impairment find it very difficult to concentrate when there is a background noise. So this is very important. If we keep the noise, we block the noise. Okay. By blocking out some of all the noise through closing door or window can be a simple and effective measure. And one of the things that we have to remember that if the student or wearing an assistive hearing technology, they do not hear in the same way what their peers do. Okay. And they will benefit from having unnecessary background noise to a minimum. Okay, next. How the technology benefit the deaf or hard of hearing? Nowadays, there are so many inventors are trying to invent tools for the not only for the deaf but also for the other disabilities. And these are the examples, yeah, that how the technology benefit the deaf or hard of hearing students. And the latest invention is where the MIT students, yeah, invented glove that convert sign language into speech. Yeah, this is very useful tools. Yeah, when we can convert directly the sign language into speech. Yeah, when as we know that not many people know how to use sign language. Like Imanina said, she would like to learn sign language. Yeah. So these tools are very useful. Yeah, we can convert directly the sign language into a speech. And as the Grab, yeah, application are very useful in helping the deaf worker who work in the Grab. Yeah, how the apps can help the client, yeah, to order something from Grab, and without using a voice command. Yeah, they can only text, and then the worker, the deaf worker, they can understand what they ordered. Yeah, so the apps is very useful, yeah, for the deaf worker. And also in Malaysia, Starbucks Malaysia, they are now hiring deaf worker, and in Penang, I've been told that all the worker there are deaf. All right, and then they are fully utilize the use of technology, as you can see in the screen. Yeah, they use a screen that that have sign language and also a written language. Yeah, so the people that who doesn't know the sign language, they can just type or touch the screen, and then the information will get into the screen, and the deaf worker, they can take the order without have to use their voice or um, to give the feedback to the customers. Okay, all right, next. Okay, this is the references, and thank you. That's all from me. If there are any question, I will answer.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Shamsina, for the very insightful lecture. Okay, we will now proceed with the Q&A session. Based from what Dr. Shamsina had said earlier, we get to know about the difference between assistive technologies and also digital tools. And we also get to know about so many different types of technologies: no tech, low tech, medium tech, and also high tablet. Am I right, Dr. Shamsina?
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. So I have a question for you, Dr. Shamsina. Maybe you can share with us maybe your past experience, your knowledge about the inclusive education for students with hearing impairment in Malaysia.
Okay, thank you for the question, Manina. Okay, as for the inclusive education in Malaysia, we have the inclusive for hearing impairment students, but it's not a very wide range, used in a wide range. Yeah, I mean, there are still the choice is always the in the other option. Yeah, it's not in inclusive education. People are most likely to uh, get their children into integration school, or in the what we call special school. Yeah, but I believe one day, as like in Indonesia, um, they have many choices, right, for the education system for the deaf. So I believe one day in Malaysia, the inclusive will grow, yeah, as and in the other part of the world. Yeah, that was my hope, and not only me, all the people in this special education system. And I hope that one day the inclusive education in Malaysia will grow and will be accepted in our education system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shamsina, for the very clear explanation. I think that's all the question for you, Dr. Shamsina. We have finally reached the end of this interesting and productive session on education. We learned about the psychological aspect from Dr. Elga Andriana. Then we heard lovely stories from, we listened to lovely stories from Professor Dr. David Evans, and we also get to know about many different types of technologies from Dr. Shamsina. Thank you to all honorable speakers for being here and sharing your thoughts, views, and suggestions. It was a pleasure to have all of you with us this evening. Thank you to our audience for your attention and active participation. We really hope that this session gives you the information you need and beneficial for future use. Once again, thank you and have a nice day, everyone. Now we will go back to the main room. Thank you.
the fact that I can now take calls seamlessly with Kenzo too. It makes communication with my loved ones at home and overseas so much easier. I also enjoy listening to music through my phone now. This was not possible before, and it was mind-blowing. A key highlight of Kenzo too was that it hides well under my hair. As a child, I was always conscious about how others see me with my sound processor, and I use all means to hide it under my hair. With Kenzo too, I can now easily tie my hair up in a ponytail, and it definitely boosts my confidence.
Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to all. Kindly I remind again for all who to fill in the feedback form and e-certificate given at the live chat. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we have come to the final part of the ceremony, the closing session. For the closing session, with honor, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Shahrum Samsudin, Acting Campus Director of USM, to give his speech. Without further ado, please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh and good day. Yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Faisal Rafiq Muhammad Adikan, Vice Chancellor University Sains Malaysia. Yang berusaha Profesor Dr. Abdul Talib Hashim, Dean Faculty of Human Development, Universiti Pendidikan Sultan Idris. Yang berusaha Dr. Wenti Marina Minza, Vice Dean Research, Community Service and Cooperation, Faculty of Psychology, Universiti Gajah Mada, Indonesia. Yang berusaha Profesor Dr. Wan Rosli Wan Ishak, Dean School of Health Sciences, University Sains Malaysia. Yang berusaha Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Normani Zakaria, Chairperson, Audiology Program, Coordinator, Audiology Speech Pathology Unit, University Sains Malaysia. Committee members of World Hearing Day, ladies and gentlemen. Syukur Alhamdulillah, praise to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for His grace and enabling us to participate in the World Hearing Day 2022. The collaboration of Universiti Sains Malaysia, Universiti Gajah Mada and Universiti Pendidikan Sultan Idris, we appreciate all the distinguished speakers who discussed about hearing care across lifespan and education, particularly for children. I believe that today's program enables all the participants to gain a better understanding of hearing healthcare and inclusive education for children with hearing impairment. It takes great effort to bring all professionals together to share experiences, knowledge, and evidence-based practices in the hearing and education for children with hearing impairment. In the past, education for children with hearing impairment focused on providing sign language and cued speech. Families resisted enrolling their children in formal school, indirectly thinking that our system was incapable of supporting their education and developmental needs. Through this hearing awareness campaign, we hope to promote better hearing healthcare and implementation of effective procedures for accessing and managing those with hearing loss. In 2018, 29.5% of children with hearing impairment had been enrolled in inclusive education program by the Ministry of Education Malaysia and increased to 32.5% in 2020. This increment demonstrated that parents are more aware about hearing healthcare and try to ensure their children received the opportunities that are available for them. Apart from that, the universal newborn hearing screening has been implemented in Malaysia, including public hospitals and Hospital University Science Malaysia, to identify hearing problems at early age. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my hope that this program will enable strengthen existing relationships while fostering new collaborative towards improving hearing healthcare. Indeed, this program provides a useful platform to develop and engage the Malaysian and Indonesian communities. Last but not least, I would like to express my gratitude and congratulations to the working committee of this program, which includes members from Audiology Program and Audiology Unit, University Science Malaysia, Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Gajah Mada, Indonesia, and Faculty of Human Development, University Pendidikan Sultan Idris, Malaysia as well. All industry partners. Thank you for your kind presence. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Shahrum Samsudin, for the closing speech. With the end of the speech marks the end of our event for today, World Hearing Day 2022. Hearing care across the lifespan and education, Malaysia and Indonesia's perspective. Our deepest gratitude to all panelists for their overwhelming knowledge. We hope that in the future, there could be more collaborative events between universities across country. And last but not least, thank you to all participants for your time. Till we meet again. Buah nanas, buah ceri, dicampur gula, oh enak sekali. Cukup sekian pertemuan kali ini. Semoga ketemu di kemudian hari. Salam kami memimpin, salam pengetahuan suluh budiman, dan salam mengakar di lokal, dihargai dunia. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The QR code for attendance and e-certificate will be shared on the screen right now.
Hi, I'm Angeline, and I'm 25 years old this year. I am a CATS accountant, and I received my cochlear implant when I was 4 years old. When I first learned about Kenzo 2, I was looking forward to the off-the-ear wearing option and direct streaming features. When I work from home and need to attend the meetings virtually, the direct streaming features enable me to hear my colleagues clearly, and I was able to engage and participate better. I also love the fact that I can now take calls seamlessly with Kenzo 2. It makes communication with my loved ones at home and overseas so much easier. I also enjoy listening to music through my phone now. This was not possible before, and it was mind-blowing. A key highlight of Kenzo 2 was that it hides well under my hair. As a child, I was always conscious about how others see me with my sound processor, and I use all means to hide it under my hair. With Kenzo 2, I can now easily tie my hair up in a ponytail, and it definitely boosts my confidence.